Good evening. This is lesson 9-6 on circles. In tonight's lesson, you're going to find out how to find circumference of circles, and you're also going to be able to use the central angles in order to make a circle graph. So we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, and we've used proportions in the past, so I'm going to skip that for now and get started right away on how to find circumference. Well, in order to first find circumference, we should probably go through some terms you're going to see. First, what is a circle? Well, that's when you have all sets of points on a plane, the given distance, or the same distance from a point. So, a lot of the times they talk about that middle point. They're all, if I said that was the middle, all around the circle, the distance would be the same. Okay? Then they talk about the radius. Well, when we talk about the radius, that is a segment that has one endpoint at the center and then the other endpoint at the side of the circle. So for example, if that was the middle, this could be the radius. All right, because it is half the circle. That times it's half the distance to the other side. All right, so that's radius. Then when we talk about a chord, that's just a segment who has both endpoints on the circle. So for example, from here to here, I could make a line, and this would be considered a chord. And again, just as long as both endpoints are on some part of the circle, we have a chord. Then the diameter is a chord that passes through the center of the circle, so it goes from one end all the way to the other, going through the middle. All right, so for example, I'm going to use my middle point here. And in blue, this would be considered the diameter. Or, just to let you know, I could continue the radius all the way across. And then that whole thing would again be considered the diameter. And then finally, when we talk about the circumference, it's the distance around the circle. So another way we usually hear about it with other polygons and shapes are perimeter. That's usually what we hear when we say, oh, find the perimeter, you add up all the sides and you're done. Well, with circles, you can't add up the sides because there's really no side to it. It's all curves. So we have to do something else. And this is what we do. So what we do is we take pi, or in this case, we're going to round it to 3 1400. And there's two ways you could do it. You could either just multiply it by the diameter if they give it to you. So if they say the diameter of this circle, so all the way across it is 10, well, you multiply 10 by 3 1400, and that'll give you the circumference. Or sometimes they just give you the radius of the circle. Now, we talked before, radius is half the circle. So in order to get to the diameter, you'd multiply it by 2. So you end up doing 2 times the radius, then timesing it by that 3 1400. And that gives you a good estimate of what that is going to be as well. Now, I keep saying estimate because, as you know, pi is actually more than 3 1400. It's this ongoing number. It's like 3.14159265 and so on, and it has no end in sight. So we can't really say, without a doubt, that the entire perimeter is exactly what it would be, because again, we round with it. So you're going to see how we show it's an approximate. So here, find the circumference of the circle. Well, here I'm looking at it, and I notice they give me the radius. So in order to find the circumference, I have to do 2 times the radius times pi. So 2 times the radius is 6, so I have 12 inches times that 3 1400. And I'll get the circumference is approximately 37 6800 inches. There you go. So that would be your answer. So again, because they gave me the radius, I first times it by 2, then multiplied by 3 1400. Now here they say find the circumference of each circle. And I'm going to let you do A and B here. But notice for A, they give you the diameter. All right, and for B, they give you the radius. So go ahead and do these, and when you're all done, come back and check your answer. So go ahead and pause me now. All right, so on this one, they give us the diameter. So I'm going to use pi times diameter. So I have 3 and 1400ths times 3. And I get 9 and 4200ths inches. So on B here, again, they give me the radius. So first, I'm going to have to multiply that 188 and 4/10 times 2. Then I can multiply by 3 and 1400ths. So 188 and 4/10 times 2 is 376 and 8/10 times 3 and 1400ths. And the circumference is approximately 1,183 and 152 thousandths of an inch. There we go. So that's how we find the circumference. Now we're going to talk about how we make circle graphs. And this time we don't get to just use our best judgment. We have to use what we know about central angles and set up proportions. So my question up here is, when do people use circle graphs? Well, usually when we're talking about a whole population or whole group, and we're talking about like preferences or what somebody does in a day, and it's going to total up to be 100%. Because as we know, a circle is a whole, and when we take parts of it, well, that's so much of a percent of it. So to make a circle graph, first you need to find the measure of each central angle. And how we find a central angle is you use a vertex. All right, and we need to recognize and use that there are 360 degrees in a circle. So you're going to set up a proportion to do this, and it's going to be out of 360 degrees because, again, that's a whole circle, and we're going to have to find out the central angle from this piece. And then, again, whatever we find out about the part versus whole is over here. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this one. Make a circle graph for Jackie's weekly budget. So they show Jackie's weekly budget. She spends 20% on entertainment, 20% on food, 10% transportation, and she puts 50% or half of it in savings. So what we're going to have to do is first set up a proportion. And what is nice here is it's out of 100%. So if I'm setting up the entertainment piece here to find that central angle, well, the part she spends is 20% out of the whole of 100, and that's going to be some number out of 360 degrees. So if I do proportions, cross products, 20 times 360 divided by 100, and you get it's a 72-degree measure. You do the same with food. And looking right away, it's the same, so I know it's going to be 72%. Right? Same with transportation. She spends 10% out of 100. And some of you might say, oh, well, I can just take half of that 72. And yes, that would work out. You get 36 degrees. And I'm sorry, just realized I switched that to a percent. It should have been a degree. So it's 72 degrees, 36 degrees. And finally, savings, well, 50% out of the 100 of the 360 should be 180 degrees. There we go. So we have our measurement. Now we make our circle graph. And there's a couple steps. You can use your compass to make sure you're actually using the correct measurements here, or making sure your angles are correct. So you draw yourself a circle, and a lot of times we use a compass to do that. I have one already made here. And then you use those central angles with my protractor that I have right here. And finally, label the pieces and then give it a title. So here, I'm going to start with the easiest part, which would probably be this 180 degrees. Because what I know about circles, well, 180 degrees is half of it. So again, I'm going to say, well, that's my middle part here. And then halfway, or 180 degrees, is half the circle. So there we go. So this is all savings. Okay. And then we need to do, well, 72. So at this middle piece again, right, and I can go ahead and find, I'm just having some difficulties here, it looks like. All right. Why don't I try that piece again? All right, I know that would be half of it. And let's see, 72 degrees I'm going to lock that into place. There we go. All right, 72 degrees. And I'm having some technical difficulty, it looks like. My protractor does not want to move either. So I'm going to have to just label this. And excuse me for not having the exact. So that's 180 degrees for the savings piece. So it's 50% of our budget. Then we talk about, well, 20% of our budget, or about 72 degrees, which if I take a look here where 0 is, it's about right in there. So that is spent on, well, entertainment. All right, then we have another 72 degrees, and I think I'm going to just start on this other side. It's about right there, and that is on food. And then finally, this last 36% stands for T, and that is transportation. Couldn't quite remember. There we go. So now I have all the pieces to it. So now I can give it a title, which is Jackie's Weekly Budget. I like to make it nice and easy, and if they have a title already, use the one they give you. So Jackie's Weekly Budget. There we go. So we're going to do one more of these so we all get to practice a little bit more, and maybe I can use a protractor a little better this time. So draw a circle graph of this data. So they tell us the spring dance attendance. We have freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. This time it's not in percents, so we have to find out how many of each group out of the whole went to the dance. So freshmen, we know 120 out of, well, they don't give us the title, or the total. So first thing I have to do is find out how many actually paid by adding all that up. And I get 440 students. So there we go. And then again, it's always out of 360 degrees. So I go ahead and do that, 360 times 120 divided by 440, and I find it's about 98 degrees. Here it was actually 98 and 1/10, but we're not going to go ahead and, we're going to round them. So I want you to finish up this one. So go ahead and do this part, and when you're all done, you can come back and check your answer. So go ahead and pause me now. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the sophomores, which we label P, so 82 out of 440. Again, you just go through these steps. And again, I round this one to 67 degrees. Then I have the juniors, which is 137 out of 440. And it's 112 degrees. And then final one, the seniors are 101. So first thing, really important, make sure you have your measurements correct. Otherwise, when you go ahead and do your circle graph, well, your data is going to be wrong, and that makes it a lot more difficult to answer these. So seniors ended up being 82 and 6/10, but I rounded that one up to 83 degrees. So now that we have that information, it's our job now to make our circle graph. So again, I'm going to do my best here. Okay, I'm going to say the central measurement is right here. And if you use a compass to draw your circle, you're going to know exactly where the center is. Unlike me, who has to be a little more careful on it. There we go. So, first is 98. So I'm looking, 98 is right from here to here. There we go. All right, so that is freshman. And I know I say label at the end, but I like to just label it as I go. It kind of helps me out here. And then let's see here. From here, I can actually turn it so I have my next line. And I know that's not exactly straight. Of course, you are going to use a straight edge to do these, I have no doubt. I'm going to go ahead and do juniors, which is 112. So notice I have it at my 0, and then I find 110. And here's about where 112 is. And that is juniors. And again, I can turn my protractor to make my new next line. All right, and then let's see, I think that is sophomore, so 67. So starting here, 67 is right about there. And finally, my seniors, if I just check it, it should be just about what I have. So put it on that line, and then I take a look, and look at that. It's right over 83. So I know I did it right. So there we go, and that is seniors. All right, so I have all my labels. The last thing I have to do is give it a title. So I look back, and it's a spring dance attendance. All right, we are all done with that, and that is your lesson for tonight. So tonight we talked about how to find the circumference by doing pi times diameter, or if they give you the radius, 2 times the radius times pi. And then we also talked about how to make circle graphs using that central angle. You have a good night. See you tomorrow.